So in today's video lesson, I want to talk to you about how to read for IARTS 1170, Arts in Contexts. So before you do any reading for any academic class, one thing that's always going to be really important is that you keep in mind your purpose for reading. If you think about why you're reading something before you read it, it will help you both be more efficient and do the reading faster, but it'll also help you understand the reading better. And so a couple of purposes that you probably would have for reading in this class, IARTS 1170, and really for almost any class. First would be to learn the concepts and vocabulary of this course, which seems pretty clear. The second purpose you would probably have would be to complete the assignments that your professor has given. In this class, IARTS 1170, you're specifically going to be focused on how you can do your video comments on VoiceThread, and how you can write your short essays for your responses. And of course, one of your purposes for doing reading in a class is going to be to get a good grade in that class. Most students want to get good grades, and it's pretty hard to get a good grade in most classes without doing the reading that the professor asks you to do. There's one more purpose that you may have in mind, and that especially is going to be for a class maybe not that you are taking because you have to, but a class that you're taking because you choose to take it, or just a class where you're really passionate and interested in the subject. And so that's the one I put down as optional, but that purpose might be to develop your skill and your interest in this subject. And of course, depending on what your purpose is, it's going to kind of change how you read. And so we're going to be thinking about, mostly in this lesson, those first three purposes. And how we read for IARTS 1170. So here I have a 6-step process for reading for this class. And the reason why I think about reading as a process is because a lot of people imagine, when they think about reading, they think reading starts when you open up a book and it ends when you close the book. And that's what reading is. But reading, especially reading for a university class, is a lot more than just looking at words on a page. And so the process that you'll see here actually starts way before you start reading the textbook, and it actually ends way after you read the textbook. But I consider all of these things to be part of the reading process for this class. And so I'll go over the 6 steps right now, just an overview, but then we'll get into each step in detail later. So step 1 is where you should watch the unit overview video and read the unit objectives for whatever chapter you happen to be reading right now. Step 2 is where you will watch Dr. Field's VoiceThread lecture. You'll watch it for a first time, but you actually won't do the video comments yet. You'll save those for later. Step 3, you should check the response prompt that Dr. Field has provided and highlight any keywords that'll help you understand what you need to do for the prompt. Step 4 is now when you actually open up that book, or in this case you open up the PDF file for your chapter, and you read the chapter. You take notes and thinking about what will help you with the video comments and the response, what will help you with the assignments you have to do. Step 5, you'll actually watch that VoiceThread lecture again, and this time you'll record your video comments. And finally, to end the reading process, you'll have to write your response, your short essay in response to the chapter. So let's get into detail about each of these steps. So step 1 is to watch the unit overview video and look at the objectives. And so just to remind you, I'll take you into the Blackboard course for IART, and for each unit, if you go in, Dr. Field has done a short video, so you should watch this video. And there's usually a few objectives for each chapter. It's really important to go over these, because these provide like a basic overview, a gist of what you're supposed to learn. And knowing what you're supposed to learn actually is really helpful when it comes to understanding the readings and the lectures. It prepares your mind for knowing what you're going to learn. Step 2 is to watch the VoiceThread lecture for the first time. So I actually really encourage you to watch the lecture before you do the reading, because the reading is long and detailed. There's a lot of information in each chapter. But in the lecture, Dr. Field really just covers kind of the main points of the reading. So that way, by covering the main points before you get into all the detail, it'll make the chapter easier to understand. But also really important, when Dr. Field picks the main points that he thinks from the chapter, what he's telling you is what he thinks is most important. He's telling you the ideas and the vocabulary that are most important in that chapter. And if you want to get a good grade in any class, it's always really important to try to figure out, what does the professor think is important. That's one of the secrets to getting a good grade. And that's what these VoiceThread lectures will tell you. But I really want to encourage you to not do the video comments the first time you watch the lecture. When you do the reading, it's going to add a lot of detail to your understanding. And so you'll really be able to give a much better comment after you've done the full reading. So step 3 is to check the response prompt, and I'll show you where to find this. So we're in Unit 1 right now, and for each unit there are modules for the week. So if you go into week 1, first you see the readings, and you can download the chapters here. Then you'll see the VoiceThread lecture that you should watch, and then the third thing is the response, and this is the writing assignment. And so this is where you'll find the prompt for the response. So read that prompt and highlight any keywords, because this will help you focus your reading, and it'll help you know exactly what information you need to get. And so when I look at the prompt for response 1, I notice a couple of keywords that I've highlighted here. The first is that it tells us chapter 1 in the introduction are all about theories of art. So that's what we're focused on right now, theories of art. And it tells us then that there are 2 specific theories that we should be looking for in chapter 1. The first is the theory of disinterestedness, and the second is the theory of art as ritual. So that tells me specifically what information I should be looking for carefully in my reading. The theory of disinterestedness and the theory and art as ritual. And then in the last sentence of the prompt, he tells us what we should do in our writing. And the first thing is we need to describe the theories. So now I know as I read about those 2 theories, I'm going to have to describe them later. So I should be looking for things like, what's the definition of the theory? What are some examples of how this theory is used to describe art? And in this book, they often talk about like either ancient art or art of, that goes back a long time to like the 17th century. But also this book talks a lot about modern art. So I should probably be looking for examples of modern art and how each of those theories are describing modern art. And then the next thing that it tells me I need to do is explore the strengths and weaknesses of these theories. So again, as I read about these 2 theories, I need to be looking at what are their strengths, how do they help us understand certain types of art, and what are the weaknesses? What are the types of art that these theories can't really help us understand or explain? So by looking at that prompt first, it really focuses me and tells me what information I should be looking for as I read the chapter. What's going to be most important in helping me complete my assignments. And then step 4, now you actually open up the chapter and you read. So while you're reading, one thing I could encourage you to do, especially if you're trying to be more efficient with your time, is you could kind of skim and scan the chapter and look for the parts that are going to give you the information that you need in order to do your video comments and to write your prompt. And because you've looked at those things first, you know exactly what it is you need to find. So you could use some of those skimming and scanning skills to do the reading faster. But of course, if you really want to take your time, you could start at the beginning of the chapter and read it through all the way to the end. It's going to be your choice at this point. But what I do want you to do definitely is take notes while you're reading. And you'll take notes specifically that'll help you write your response and make your video comments. And you can see on this slide an example of the notes that I took from chapter 1 of But Is It Art? And I will show you, actually I'm going to do this as a regular homework assignment for my class as well. Every time you read a chapter for IARTS, I want you to actually share your notes with me. And so I'm going to show you where you're going to share your notes with me. So we are in Teams, and I'm in the class notebook, as you can see. And what you'll find in the content library on the homework section, I have an example of reading notes here. So you can take a look at my example reading notes. This is how I took the notes, but you can take the notes and really in any way that you like, any way that's useful for you. And so what I want you to do, if you go into your personal folder, I'll open up most of those right now. One of the sections in your personal folder is class notes. So go in here and, when you do chapter 1, go ahead and just put like, BIIA chapter 1, and you can put your notes here on this page. And then every time you read a new chapter, you'll click this new page, and you'll create a new one for each chapter as you do the reading. And if you want to come in here and, you can open this up and you can type blah, 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 blah for your notes. And you could write your notes that way. Or if you prefer to take your notes by hand, like in a physical notebook, then you could use a pencil or a pen. You can write your notes in a notebook, and then you can take a picture with your cell phone or something and post that picture here. Either way you do it is fine, just as long as I can come in here after each unit is due, and I can check your notes and just make sure that you've done your notes. So that's going to be a regular thing, is putting your reading notes in the class notebook. And the last thing that I'll encourage you when you're taking your notes, write the notes in your own words. So Dr. Field in his syllabus, and usually in his prompts as well, he kind of reminds you again and again and again to use your own words. He really wants you to paraphrase, and he does not want you to copy sentences and phrases from the textbook reading or from his lectures. And so if you use your own words in your notes, it'll make it much easier for you to paraphrase later when you're going to actually write your response. And also, by using your own words in your notes, it increases your understanding of the reading that you're doing. So I really, really encourage you to use your own words when you're taking notes. Step 5 is to go back to that voice thread and watch that lecture again after reading. And you may feel like this is, not very efficient, like you're wasting time by watching it again. But actually, this repetition of information, watching the voice thread lecture, reading the chapter, watching the voice thread lecture again, this repetition will really, really deepen your understanding of the concepts from the chapter. And as you watch the voice thread lecture the second time, now I think you're ready to do your video comments. Because you're going to have a lot of specific details now from the reading to help you give a really good comment. So my recommendation is you should have your reading notes out and available to you. And when you're planning your comment, look for details and examples in the reading that you can use to support the point you're making in your comment. Professors, that's what they're always looking for. How detailed is your response? Because that, number one, tells them that you really understood the reading well. If you're able to provide accurate details from the reading. And number 2, it also tells the professors that you're really thinking deeply about what you're learning, and you're not just giving like a quick response with no thought to it. So definitely use your reading notes when you're making your video comments. And finally, step 6, we're getting to the last step, is when you write your response. So go into Blackboard and write your short response essay, which is going to be about 250 to 350 words. It's like 1 to 1.5 pages, so it's a very short essay. And I'm going to remind you again to use your own words. Make sure you're paraphrasing and not copying from the reading or the lecture. Use your reading notes, again, just like you did before. Use your reading notes to help you include specific details in your response essay. And the last thing I'll remind you is to be sure to answer the whole prompt. Many prompts have more than one question. They'll have 2 or even 3 or 4 parts that you need to respond to. And that's also part of why we highlighted the keywords earlier on when we looked at the prompt. Because if you remember, that highlighting told us that there were really kind of 4 things we had to respond to in this first prompt. There's 2 theories, and for each theory, there's 2 things you have to write about. So you have to describe the theory of disinterestedness, and you have to give the strengths and weaknesses of disinterestedness. And then you have to describe the theory of art as ritual, and you have to explore the strengths and weaknesses of art as ritual. So even just looking at response number one, there's really 4 things that you have to include to really have a complete response and respond to the whole prompt. So that's my lesson on how you should be reading for IARTS 1170, Arts and Context. So now that you've watched this video lesson, I want you to go through the full process, do the 6 steps to do the reading for Chapter 1, and I want you to do your homework by sharing your notes for Chapter 1 with me in Teams in our class notebook.